All right, we are getting things started, making sure that the stream is live and going. Just checking the chat here, making sure everything's working well. So welcome to Advancement Tech. We're going to get started in a few minutes. If you want to join the chat, it is available on YouTube. You do need an account or channel, I believe, to sign in to be able to chat, but at some point I'm going to take questions, so you're welcome to do that if you'd like. So I'm just going to look through a couple of things here and we'll get started in just another minute. All right, just checking the chat, making sure things are okay. And we'll get started very shortly now. All right, so we will go ahead and get started. All right, so welcome to Advancement Tech. This is episode 3. What is JavaScript? So thank you for attending, or thank you for watching this later on the stream or on YouTube. I'm going to go over a little bit of a background about who I am. I'm going to spend about 15 to 20 minutes on general education. I'm going to have a Q&A period as well. So who am I? My name is Preston Jameson. I've worked at 2 different universities over 12 years. I oversaw development and advancement services at those universities. Since then, I founded a company, created a product called Advancement Form, which does online giving and event registration. So the topic we're covering today for Advancement Tech, and this is technology related to advancement, nonprofits, fundraising, is what is JavaScript? So JavaScript is a programming language used in web browsers. So if you look in the HTML page of something, you may see a script tag such as this. So you have an HTML script tag that opens and closes, and within it you see some code, and this code is JavaScript. What this will do is actually set up Sorry about that. What this will do is actually put a little pop-up that says Hello World. So when you think about HTML pages and JavaScript and CSS, which are some previous episodes of Advancement Tech, HTML is responsible for the content. So any images is in HTML, copy is in HTML. The CSS is responsible for styling those elements. So defining colors and whether text is large or small and how much padding is between things. JavaScript is responsible for any dynamic elements and interactivity on the page. So for example, let me just jump to this really quickly. So this is a form that is in advancement form, and it does have a dynamic element that is using JavaScript. So basically, based upon how you answer this question at another person, it's going to show or hide fields. This feature uses JavaScript. So you just click this and it uses JavaScript to show you a second person, or you click no and it goes away. So that's what I mean by dynamic element. It's something that you like add more fields or create a message, something that happens dynamically on a page, that is due to JavaScript. So if we go back to our presentation here, so there are 3 ways to add JavaScript to your HTML page. One, there are attributes in HTML that begin with on, and they represent different events. So for example, there's the on-click event or the on-change event. So you can put these attributes on a single HTML element, and if that event gets triggered, it will run some JavaScript code. Next, you'll see JavaScript in an HTML tag that's on the HTML page, and that uses the script tag. And then lastly, you can link to a separate JavaScript file using the, actually this is incorrect. You actually use the script tag. I will have to correct that. So that you actually use the script tag with a source attribute to define that. But we'll look at that in a second here. So that's a typo. But we'll look at that right now. So using the on attributes, and on I mean on click, on change. Again, these are HTML tags, and you create an attribute called onClick, and it equals, and you can run just straight JavaScript or some function. And when this button gets clicked, it'll show a pop-up that says, "You clicked me." Now, if anyone is in the chat and they have any difficulties listening to me or watching me, please go ahead and post something in the chat and I'll check it. Or if you have any questions as I'm going over this, I will check the chat periodically and I'll answer those questions. Okay, the next way is using a script tag. So HTML supports adding JavaScript via an on-page tag. So you have within the script tag and you put some JavaScript that gets run. Now there's a particular place on the console where it can log information, and this will print this message to the console. That's what console.log does. Now a JavaScript file. So again, HTML can run a separate JavaScript file, and it will just go through and execute all the information in there. So for example, within this head tag, we have a script tag. So again, there's a typo in the previous one where I said link. It's actually a script tag that has a source attribute that defines the file that you want, of the JavaScript you want to run. And that can be in the head of the HTML, or it can be somewhere within the body. So it doesn't need to be in the head. And imagine this particular JavaScript did something when you clicked this button with a class of special. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at some live coding. Okay, so this is a very simple page I set up. And this is the HTML for that page. So we see the page title, what is JavaScript? I am linking in a style sheet just to do some additional styling. I do have an external JavaScript file that I'm bringing in. We'll take a look at in a second. But here in the H1 tag, you see what is JavaScript, and then the paragraph tag. And then I have some JavaScript defined on this button, and basically use JavaScript using an HTML attribute. So I added an HTML attribute on click, and when that is clicked, create an alert that says you clicked me. So if I go here and click here, it's going to show for the browser an alert box that says you clicked me, which is exactly what this says to do. And if I click it again, it'll pop up again. So that's one way to actually run JavaScript on your page. Another way is to use an HTML script tag. So here I've defined another button, click to show in the console. And when this button gets clicked, or actually, let me take a step back for a second. So this script gets run when the page is loaded. And the very first thing it does is it's going to log something to the console. So what's the console? So we're going to take a look at that. If you go, at least in Google Chrome, and other browsers have other consoles, I'm going to click on the three dots up here. I'm going to go to More Tools and Developer Tools. Now we've seen this before, looking at elements as looking at the HTML. We've looked at this area for CSS. Well, there's this console here, and this actually can report out what's going on with JavaScript. So one thing to take away with this is that you can look for errors on your web page by looking here. So like on your website, if you go to these developer tools and then go to the console, you can just look and see how a page is doing. Are there any errors there? And you can potentially diagnose what may be a problem if you are seeing any errors there. Ideally, you shouldn't see any errors there. But let's go ahead and take a look at this. So this is the console, and you can see the page loaded. So if we go back to what we have here, you can see it ran this JavaScript as it loaded the page. And the very first thing it did is log to the console. So create an entry in the console and says the page loaded. So when the page loaded, this code ran. The next thing you have is that it's going to look in the document, that means your web page, get an element by its ID. So it's looking for something with the ID of console, and there's a button that has the ID of console. So it will find this, and then it says when this element is clicked, run this function. And this function will actually log to the console here, the button was clicked. So hopefully that makes sense. When I click this button, it will fire that event and then log to the console the button was clicked. And I can click it again, and it actually doesn't print it again, but it actually says 2. So that event happened twice, or that console log happened twice. And I can keep on clicking, and you can see that it keeps on adding how many times that was sent to the console. All right, so now let's look at a JavaScript file. So again, looking at the HTML, I have a select box here, and options blue, green, red, which is what it's showing here. There's a select. I have an ID of colors to be able to identify this select. And I have, when this changes, run the JavaScript report colors. So there's some function called report colors somewhere. It's not anywhere in the HTML because it is in this linked JavaScript here. So if I look in here, I have a function called report colors. Now this does a few different things, but it's not too different. Number one, it says, let's create a variable called color and find the value of an element of colors. So basically, whatever you change your select to, grab its value. So if I change this to blue, grab the value blue. That's what this means. Grab the value from the colors select and then print that color out. So it should print in the console blue. Now it also does some more things here. It also says basically grab the color area. So look for an element called a color area, which is right down here. I have an H2 defined called color area. So it's going to grab that with this and store it in a variable called color area. And then change the HTML in it to be what that color is, so it'll be blue, and then make the style of the color blue. So it's doing a few different things. It's going to turn it blue. So if I go here and I select blue, it's going to print in the console as well as print out this H2 and making it blue. Similarly, if I make it green, it'll change it to green, and you can see it logs here too, and then red. So that's some just very basic HTML, an introduction to it. Now, let's take a look at the Advancement Form website, because I want to take a look at some JavaScript in here. So if I right-click and go to View Page Source, again, we see a lot of different HTML, and there are some script tags here. Now I'm not linking in a separate JavaScript style sheet in the head up here, but you do see some scripts. So this script I can tell because it's called Google Analytics. That is a Google Analytics script. Now you will see some JavaScript that you're going to be adding to your website that they want it to go in the head part of your HTML page. And you should follow the instructions for how that JavaScript is designed, because some of it needs to go in the, or can go in the head of your HTML page. Some can go at the bottom of your page, because JavaScript needs to be able to find certain elements on the page. And if you load it too early and it's not, that JavaScript may load and try to do something, looking for something on the page, and it will fail. So just make sure that when you're adding JavaScript snippets to your page, follow the instructions on where the best place is to put them. Normally it's in the head or at the bottom of the body, and we'll take a look at that in a second here. Here's another JavaScript snippet that can go in the head, and then a Facebook pixel code that again goes in the head based upon the instructions provided by the vendor. Now, I'm not going to go over what's here, but this is just something to keep in mind. You may find these in your own website if you're looking at it. The next area that you see a lot of JavaScript potentially is actually at the end of the body of the HTML page. So basically all the other HTML. Okay, I'll see a question. I'll get to that in a second. So we'll put the JavaScript at the end, so that way the whole page loads before the JavaScript starts. So that's one reason why a lot of times some JavaScript you'll see at the very end of the body. So here we can see a lot of different JavaScript being loaded into the page, again using the source attribute. But again, we have a few other areas that use script tags to load certain JavaScript in. Now, if we take a look at the JavaScript in here, again, a lot of times with JavaScript is linked in from a file, it'll be compressed, so it'll be very difficult to try and read it. But just know that this is how you can basically take a look at what a JavaScript file is. And a lot of times, even if it's linked in, it will have some sort of instructions on where it comes from and the source of the file. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so we had a question, what if a page blocks JavaScript? So I don't know about a page blocking JavaScript, but a browser can choose to not execute JavaScript or have it off. And if that's the case, if it's off, there is this no script tag where you can, so in this case, Facebook actually adds an image to the page. So it's basically a fallback if there's no JavaScript to be able to use this Facebook pixel code. But I'm not aware of a page actually blocking JavaScript. That would be something that the browser would do by not running it. You can also have there are also cases where certain tools like blocking ads could block certain JavaScript from executing, so it may be looking for specific cases, so that's another possibility. Okay, so that's what you meant. Okay. All right. So let's see if we go back to here. Just want to make sure I covered. Okay, so I think that's pretty much an introduction to JavaScript. Are there any other questions that people have about JavaScript? So again, I'm not really teaching you how to code in it. I showed you a little bit of an introduction to it, but I wanted you to be able to kind of look at and know kind of why things happen. For example, the takeaways I would have from this is if you're looking at a web page and there's some issue, I would look to the console here. So again, going to your developer tools and going to the console to see if there's an error. So actually, let me do this really quickly. I'm going to go and create an error. So I'm going to change this to be col.log. So clearly there's an error in this JavaScript. And if I save it, and now if I run this page again, you can see now it's showing an error. Uncount reference error, col is not defined. And it even tells me where it's at. So in the JavaScript HTML file at line 27, which is exactly where it's at. So if you're looking at a web page and having problems, particularly with JavaScript or dynamic elements, looking in the console is a great place to look to try and get a clue as to what might be going on. And then if I correct this and save it, that error will go away. And the other thing I want to mention is that pay attention if you are adding JavaScript elements from Facebook or Google Analytics. Pay attention to where they want you to add it, and or where your content management system or CMS allows you to place it. So, sometimes that's in the head of your HTML, or sometimes it's at the body. And again, it depends on how that JavaScript is designed to look for elements on the page. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right. So, and with that, I was wondering, are there any questions? And we'll focus first on, are there any questions about the content presented or anything you're wondering about JavaScript? Now, while I wait to see if there are any questions, I'll talk about upcoming shows. So we go live at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Friday. The next show is going to be what is HTTP and HTTPS? And that's going to be next Friday the 15th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, this makes reference to when you look at a web page, you'll always see something like HTTPS or HTTP, well, except for that, so HTTPS. So what's the difference and why is that important? And particularly, most websites are moving from using this to this, and even Google is ranking sites higher when they're using HTTPS and not using HTTP. So we're going to cover that and why it's important if your website isn't already set up for doing secure HTTP, why you should be moving towards it. The next episode after that on the 22nd is going to be sharing on Facebook. So we're going to look at some best practices and how to set up your page to be able to have it look its best when you're sharing items on Facebook. Now, a lot of CMSs may already have this covered and you're perfectly fine with it. But if you have a page that you're not quite happy with how some of the sharing on Facebook looks, we'll cover some of that and look at there's a developer tool called the debugger to kind of look at what your resulting share will look like before you actually share it on Facebook. And then apart from that, I'm taking suggestions for what content you want to see in the future. So you can feel free to post that in the chat, or even once this video is posted, if you're looking at it later and you want to look at an upcoming show, please post a comment to this video on YouTube and looking for requests on content to cover in the future and what you would like to see. All right, so don't see any questions in the chat so far. If there are any other questions that you'd like to know about, even apart from JavaScript, kind of at the tail end of these streams, I want to see if there's any other questions about technology relating to nonprofits, advancement, or fundraising in general. I'm available, to take questions to see what you're interested in learning about. To learn more about advancement tech, you can go to advtech.tv. And also, you can also feel free to go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to be notified when we go live and when new episodes are available. And also, you can check out this link for all the recorded history of the Advancement Tech episodes. So I don't see any questions currently. We will go ahead and close this episode out. I will stay on the chat for a bit to see if anybody has any additional questions. Other than that, I hope you have a great Friday. Thanks.